go to our next question, which is Freya Rogers. Freya?
Thank you. Only 5% of cancer carers get a carer's assessment from their local authority. What more can be done to support these carers and make sure that they get the support that they need and the support that they require?
Who will give us some not you, Ciarán, because I came to you first last time, but who will give us just a very brief definition of what the carer's assessment is, just in case there are those who are not wholly familiar with the formality of the carer's assessment. Andrew, you can do that.
Well, I'm not really that well placed to do that, because
who can do it?
I think you should go to Paul.
Okay, Paul.
Leap into the hole now. I mean, basically what a carer's assessment does is it's looking at the needs of that family member, that person who's providing support to someone with an illness or disability, in terms of what psychological support they might need, what physical support they might need, or practical support they might need. And at the moment, the carer's assessments, they are something which people are entitled to, but they are not widely publicised. And there is no automatic right to a service once an assessment's been done, even if it concludes that you should be getting support. And that's one of the changes that the care legislation that's currently going through Parliament will bring in. Local authorities, once they've assessed someone and found they have needs that should be being met, practical needs, they then have to provide service.
Is the assessment a requirement of the local authority with everyone who is a carer? How does the local authority and the carer come in contact if you're going straight to your
That's
to
actually the key to this question. That reality is, if you're a cancer patient, you're less likely to be coming into contact with social care unless you're a cancer patient on an end-of-life pathway. And in which case we still have real issues about getting speedy access to the appropriate care package for them and the support for the family as well. So what we need here is to make sure that health workers have, as part of their training and then part of their mandate in the way in which they do their work, that they are thinking carers, because carers are fundamental to the coordination of good care, and all too often they are left on the sidelines or dumped on. And that's why we need to make sure that health workers are signposting a person's entitlement to an assessment and the new right they will have once the care bill becomes an act to actually getting a service once you've been assessed.
And of course, for very good reason, our focus is cancer, but there are others who are carers of people who have serious medical conditions, who have a very similar challenge to face. Diane?
Well, to be realistic, if a little gloomy, I think we have to recognise that local authorities are under fantastic financial pressure, and they're looking to do less, not more. When I say local authorities, Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem, they're all worried that over time they're going to be reduced simply to performing their statutory responsibilities and emptying the bins. And it's a bit like the question of special needs assessments. People are entitled to them, but they don't happen, or they take a very, very long time to happen. What I would say on that is it really probably falls to local cancer campaigners to raise awareness of people's entitlement to these carers assessments, so people actually put pressure at a local level. But with all of these public health issues, even though the government has given local authorities a ring-fenced budget, you have to be mindful that local authorities feel, that's what they say certainly, that they're under the cosh financially.
And given that, and given 5%, given that if you make an assessment, John, it doesn't necessarily follow through that you're given support, what's your take on what should be done?
Well, basically, I think we've got to address this importantly. I mean, to directly answer the question, the health of the carer is crucially important. Now, there is an economic interest to the NHS and to the economy as a whole to get this actually right. Let alone the fact that it's the right thing to do anyway. If carers are being driven into the ground and their health is suffering as a result of what they're up to, and we are not properly monitoring this, then there is going to be a cost down the line to the NHS and to the government coffers generally. So I think what we've got to do is bang the drum a little bit more and say, look, it would be prudent, looking out over the medium term, to get this right for the benefit of both the NHS and the economy. And if we dress it up in those terms, as well as the fact it's the right thing to do, because these are volunteers, I think we could win this one.
Given that it's 5% at the moment, and that there will obviously be a testing of some kind to see in the assessment, see whether or not financial or other support is required. Do we have any? Is there any idea, Ciarán, perhaps you can know what percentage of the 100% should be entitled to or expecting to have some kind of support of the kind that the local authority can give?
Well, I would broaden it beyond local authorities, to be honest. I was one of the 5% when my wife was ill, who was identified, but that was the district nurse. And I think if there's a gap in the care bill, it's that the duty is on local authorities to identify a carer. But what about health bodies as well? And this was brought home to me recently when we did identify over in Barnes that a particular lady was a carer. And the reason she'd been missing her chemo was that she was 82, but she was the carer for her 85-year-old husband with dementia. And it's the point of this was costing the NHS a lot of money where we don't get it right. So I would broaden it and place a duty on health bodies, because then people like Dimbleby, Macmillan, Marie Curie, whoever, can wade in and support the statutory bodies to deliver some of this support.
Anyone would like to come in on this? Any comments on this, perhaps from a carer's perspective? Right down here at the front, please. Sorry, I'm just encouraging you to do a lot of exercise, sir.
Hi. My question is, I work for a local authority. You are right about the cuts and all what you talked about is how we're, through the local authorities we can actually support people. What about in the private sector? How is that information getting to the private sector? For families and people that are going through illness.
Do you mean in businesses and firms as well
other
as in
private
public
companies,
sector?
because obviously a local authority will work on the guidelines, that are set to them. But in the private sector, where my partner worked in the private sector, didn't get any time to support me through my illness at all. No time off, and it was either unpaid or you take a holiday. So as I say, and that was a private company. So, how can we make sure that the private companies are following the same guidelines as local authorities?
John just said to me, whispering a voluntary sector as well.
Yes, I think there's got to be a rounded approach to this. It's not just local authorities. We talked about the economic cost to the Treasury, talked about the NHS picking up the tab if health suffers. I think we have got to look at the private sector, but we've also got to engage in the voluntary sector. I mean, there are many voluntary organisations in charity that actually help with this and providing. I've got ones in my own constituency. But we need a rounded answer to this, a holistic view, and that's something that we in Parliament need to focus on.
Is there a case, going back to what you said, that when, as you have, if a woman has a child, you have automatic rights for people who are identified as having a caring responsibility which is very grave, that there should be some kind of requirement? I mean, it happens in a lot of views. Is that a nonsense thought, or is it a pertinent one, Andrew James?
Well, it's not a nonsense thought. The point with carers is that at some stage, just about every family in the country will have to provide care for somebody suffering from cancer or from any other illness. And carers are under enormous pressure, and indeed could sometimes be suffering from some quite significant diseases or problems in their own right, and are still expected to care. They do require support, and the care bill will introduce new rights for carers for the very first time, so that I think is a real positive. We've talked a bit about the economic case, but I think there's actually a bit of a moral case too. It isn't just a question of carers save the government money. Carers actually are the bedrock of how we care for our nearest and dearest within our community. And it's great pressures upon them, which is why they do need extra support, and care bill, I think, starts to move in that direction.
Yes, the woman, I come to you, and then the woman in the third row back here. Yes, but I can't adequately describe the beauty of your sweater.
I just wanted to make a note of a very large retailer who my sister-in-law's son had brain cancer, and this retailer was absolutely superb. They have literally given her 2 years off work, so that she can care for her son. And now that she's back at work, they're giving her flexi time, she can go off for hospital appointments. They have been absolutely superb, and every company should be doing that, regardless of whether they're private or public.
I just take you as well, and then
Okay, shouldn't
hold on a second.
shouldn't this come under the Equalities Act 2010 as an employer making a reasonable adjustment for a carer so they can have time off work?
Well, I think probably ultimately yes, but I think we should
Ultimately is a very long time.
Well, the reason I say that is I hope we can pursue the route of actually encouraging more employers to behave in the way that the previous question was talking. There is an organisation of employers who campaign on behalf of carers, led by British Gas and BT, and they've been working quite closely with the Department of Health and the Carers Trust and Carers UK over the last 6 months, putting together some proposals to really re-emphasise the fact that there are these rights to request flexible working. I think we do need to be prepared ultimately, if that is not delivering changes of behaviour amongst employers, to be able to say that there ought to be a greater statutory right for someone who is caring for someone to be able to take time more flexibly. And the reason this makes sense, it makes sense for UK PLC. You know, as our society ages, more people will have caring responsibilities in their 40s and 50s who are key to good, successful businesses. Those businesses don't want to have to recruit to replace those staff who give up work because they have a caring responsibility. So this is in the long-term interest of our country for employers to be sensible about this, but ultimately government does have to step in if employers aren't.
Just down here, just quickly back in on what you...
The point is that employers aren't aware of their responsibilities to make reasonable adjustments to allow their staff off to care.
And that's one of the points that the employers for carers, as part of the work of the department, wants to really beef up so that we aren't raising that awareness of their statutory obligations.
And how are you going to do that then?
Well, we've been talking about awareness. I'm not here as the department spokesman,
No, but
because I'm doing that now.
I was going
But the report sets out some very clear recommendations as to how to do that, and it is about raising awareness, about peer-to-peer support between employers. Because there's some really good practice out there. We need to see better.
Am I right to think that on this table there's an absolute consensus that this is a really critically important question, however quickly it can be achieved and by whatever means?
I think we need to move towards a statutory carers leave in the same way you have statutory maternity leave. And we know, even with statutory maternity leave, some employers play fast and loose. It's great when you've got fantastic employers that we heard of, but it's more difficult if there isn't a statutory right which people can stand on.
No, I don't
when I say
would you say?
they're all
I don't know
worried
what the number is.
that
There will be a no one
simply
don't
perform
know
their
the answer
statutory
to that question. I don't think it's very possible.
and it's a bit like the question of special
There will be a
needs.
shortfall. We are asking, we're looking at
But
implementing
they don't
minimum
have
staffing
to. It's a very, very long
and
time.
then saying, you can't have a
What I
minimum
would
staffing
say
level
is